Everyone else seems to be running around with Pelican cases, and if you're like me, I look at those and I'm like, why the heck would I spend $200, $300, $400, $500, $600 on a case that I'm just gonna put my camera in and leave it? In my endless quest for finding inexpensive gear that gets the job done, my case has been no exception. I found one store to have really, really good quality for the price when it comes to knockoff Pelican cases, and that is Harbor Freight. My case that I've ended up using is the Apache 3800 with ThinkTake and Pelican-ish accessories. So let's dive in. All right, so here we have the Apache 3800. The liner here, the dividers are the SKB, designed by ThinkTake. I'll link everything below. And I really, really like this divider. It's a lot better than my custom jerry-rigged one where I used floor mats, like those styrofoam floor mats, and then I, slotted them together like this. It just didn't really end up working super well. So I have this little adapter here that I'll explain in a second that usually sits on top here. But we're gonna start in the top left and kind of work our way down. So I've got 2 NPF batteries that will be relevant in a second. I've got 3 variable ND filters. So I have these 2 older ones by Gobe. I think I got these a couple years ago. And they've served me really well. They got a little loose. This one's okay, but the other one is getting a little loose. The element is kind of shaking in it, if you can hear it. But overall, good NDs, nothing to write home about. And then I got their newer one, which I just used for the lens cap for my 18 to 35 because the ND is on my 18 to 35. Moving on, we have the Yongnuo 25mm 1.7. I may put the Panasonic back in here, but for now, I've been doing more studio stuff. And if you watched my other video with this lens reviewing it, you'll know exactly why. But this lens is good for, indoor studio kind of stuff. I also have the Canon 50 1.8, the STM, just the cheap $100, $120 lens. I really do like this lens. I use it either on my XS10 or I use it with a speed booster on my G85, not my GH5. Next up, we have this little compartment here that I just freed up space with. This, I just lay the Rode Video Micros little Rycote shock mount in the side or in the bottom, flat. And then I have the Rode Video Micro sitting either, standing straight up. And then I have my little screwdriver, which happens to match it. That goes next to it. And I also have an Allen key in the bottom of there as well. We're gonna skip cameras in a second, but down here in the bottom middle-ish left, we have the battery compartments, the XS10 batteries and the G85 batteries. These are okay. It's a little annoying to get to, but gets the job done. They're actually pretty much the same size, which I've mentioned in other videos, which is nice in some ways, but also bigger batteries are always better in my opinion. Bottom right here, this compartment opened up a little bit, so I added some gaff tape, and then I have my different filter step-up rings, which I use with my Canon 50 and my Yongnuo 25. Here, in case all of you were wondering, I still have Panasonic, and in fact, I have 2 Panasonic cameras. What I needed was for event videography, whether that be my last-ish wedding coming up here in a couple weeks, or for various events that I've done that aren't weddings. I needed 2 angles that I know I could 100% trust because of reasons that I'll explain in a second. These 2 G85s are amazing. I have the Viltrox EF M2 Mark II on here that I can use with my 50 1.8, and I can use with my 18 to 35, which is quite helpful. I don't really have a place for this, so I just leave it on the camera. The only issue is it does hug the bottom of this quick release plate system, so it can be a pain to take on and off. So I just leave it on. And then I have my baby, my XS10 with the Sigma 18 to 35. So this thing is kind of a monster. The XS10 not so much, but more so the 18 to 35 takes up most of the weight. And like I mentioned, I actually have the Gobe variable ND filter. This one actually has hard stops, which is probably my favorite feature in an ND filter nowadays. I have the small rig cage on the XS10, which conveniently has a little magnet strip right here where you can keep the custom little flathead multi-tool, which I was like, oh great, it's magnetic, I'll never lose it. And then as you can see, it's not there. I lost it somewhere down below my desk in the shag carpet. So up here I have these 50mm rod, I don't know what you call them, adapters, holders, which I really like, and then cold shoe adapters here and here. So there's a lot of adaptability. And I use these 15mm rod mounts to mount with this little carbon fiber 50mm rod, my Anso NPF to Fuji W126 connector. I've had good luck with Anso in the past. I saw it in a DSLR video shooter video at one time, and I figure if Caleb uses it, I can use it. And so I picked up one of these. Build quality is fine. I feel like the NPF plate is really good. The actual dummy battery itself isn't amazing, but I mean, it works. I've tried to move things around and break connections just to see if it's reliable, and I haven't had a single issue with it. So as far as I can tell, I'll still be using this going forward, which explains these 8800 milliamp hour NPF batteries, which, you know, go big or go home, I guess, because 8800 milliamps in comparison to 1260 milliamps, I mean, you're getting like 6 times the battery life in one of these NPFs. And so honestly, I would only need one of these for an entire day of shooting versus I would probably use 4, 5, 6 of these XS10 batteries. So the other thing too is that when you put this NPF on the back end of the XS10, it actually balances out the 18 to 35 pretty well. So it feels pretty balanced in the hand. So you can't close the screen all the way, but I'll cover that in a future video if you like, so stay tuned for that, maybe. Circling back to, you know, 2 G885s and 1 XS10, for me, this makes a really good event videography kit, which is primarily what I'm shooting. Say YouTube and event videography is pretty much the two things that I'm, I guess, specialized in right now. The 2 G885s, like I said, as an infinite, no overheating recording kind of cameras that are super reliable and good enough battery life. And then the XS10 gives me that amazing image quality at actually an insanely reasonable price. And for me, the autofocus is good enough for YouTube, maybe not for professional, you know, interviews. I've had issues with people with glasses with the 51.8, but overall, you know, I wouldn't call it super reliable, but coming from the GH5, goodness, anything is better than the GH5. All right, so now for the lid organizer. I ended up buying this on eBay because I couldn't find a 3800 Apache, you know, lid from Think Tank or Pelican. I'm sure there's one out there, but I could not find one. The top left little compartment here, I have nothing in because it might interfere with the NPF plate, so I might have to find something flat or whatever. In the top right here, we have accessories for my Tascam DR10L and my lav mics. So I've got 1100 milliamp hour AAA batteries. I've got 10 of those, 2 in my DR10Ls right now. And then we have the PowerDeWise little lav mic, which I highlighted in a previous video, along with some lav mic accessories. I've come close to breaking those little Tascam DR10L clips on a shoot before, and actually I did end up breaking the little circular metal piece that holds on the lav for the DR10L at home. So I ended up buying a bunch of these just in case it happened at a shoot, because honestly, if I couldn't clip this onto someone, or if I didn't have extra clips, I would kind of be screwed. And audio is definitely incredibly important to the work I do. I also have little pop shields and stuff like that, so just a little more flexibility with audio. All right, so I've got to the left here my little bag with the Tascam DR10Ls, which I highlighted, like I said, in a previous video. So I usually fit 2 snug on the bottom, and then I wrap up the lavs to go up top. The lavs are starting to fray a little bit, which I'm a little nervous about, so that might need to be an upgrade in the future. I've got 2 microfibers, one that's gigantic-ish, and then one that came with the Gobe variable NDs. I will say, or Earth, I should say, because Earth is their new brand that they kind of rebranded themselves as. And then lastly, we have the SD card and micro SD card holder, which in my opinion is totally necessary. I'll have cards facing up that are ready to be used, and then I'll put them in the right compartment face down if they're not ready. I've got a little adapter for micro SD, and then I actually use this for family videos so that I always have one card that I can put in my XS10 or G85 and then just shoot family videos with. Just so I can keep it separate, because having family videos with a professional shoot on there as well can get a little dicey, especially when you go to format, and I do not want to lose those memories. Anyways, this was all shot on an iPhone 6s, so I'm pretty impressed with the video quality.